Good afternoon and welcome to the 48th Annual Fredericton Chamber of Commerce State of the Province Address with Premier Blaine Higgs. My name is Bob Chisholm and I'm the President of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. For obvious reasons, we are today holding the first ever virtual State of the Province Address. And quite frankly, let's hope it's the last virtual State of the Province Address. This show will be rebroadcast this evening on Rogers TV and on the Facebook pages and YouTube pages of the Province of New Brunswick, Rogers, and the Chamber of Commerce. Now, virtual and live events do have one thing in common. They're not possible without great sponsors. Today, I want to acknowledge the list of sponsors who've made today's event possible. Platinum, Siemens. Gold, Rogers and Amera. Pre-show, New Brunswick Medical Society. Q&A, APEG New Brunswick. Marketing, KPMG, Bell Alliant, Stuart McKelvey. Bronze level, Kears Marketing. Rob Blanchard Photography. Exclusive events, the Delta Fredericton, Signature Sound, and Robert Simmons. Before we move along, I do want to recognize the tremendous efforts of many New Brunswickers, starting with Dr. Jennifer Russell, our Chief Medical Officer of Health. Through this entire pandemic, they have kept us informed and they've kept us safe. And that includes every single worker in our entire healthcare system. I also want to thank the Premier and his COVID-19 all-party cabinet colleagues who early in the pandemic put party politics aside and the well-being of New Brunswickers first. Now, the COVID situation is getting better, but it's not perfect, and we have some work to do. We also are going to have another challenge, and that is rebuilding our economy. Governments have started with a series of programs to help individuals and businesses, but that won't do it alone. We need to think of ways to spend locally. So the Chamber has two asks of you today. First of all, please continue to follow all public health protocols. And secondly, think of all the ways that you can support local businesses. This evening we'll start with the Rogers pre-show sponsored by the New Brunswick Medical Society. And I want to thank Gilles Alain, the Executive Director of the Everett Chalmers Hospital Foundation, for conducting interviews. He will interview the following people: Roger Melanson, Interim Leader, Liberal Party of New Brunswick; David Kuhn, Leader, the Green Party of New Brunswick; Chris Austin, Leader, People's Alliance Party of New Brunswick; the Honourable Dorothy Shepherd, Minister of Health; the Honourable Arlene Dunn, Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, Small Business, Economic Development, Immigration and Opportunities, New Brunswick; and the Honourable Danielle Allen, Minister of Local Government and Local Governance Reform. After these interviews, local recording artist and musician Tristan Horncastle will sing our national anthem. And then a group of students from St. Mary's First Nation will welcome event participants to the unceded territory of the people of the Woolastook River. And they will sing a peace and friendship song. Faisal Kazi, President and CEO of Siemens Canada, our platinum sponsor, will introduce Premier Higgs. The Premier's address will be followed by a question and answer period hosted by Krista Ross, the CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. Krista will be using questions that have been submitted by Chamber members. I want to thank all the people for being Chamber members, and I hope you enjoy today's show.
Good afternoon. My name is Gilles Alain. I'm your host of this pre-show of the 48th Annual State of the Province Address, presented by the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. Premier Blaine Higgs will be delivering his remarks shortly, and before he does, we've invited several guests, three of them from each of the opposition parties, and a few government ministers to talk about what their expectations are of what the Premier will say, or what they hope the Premier will say today, in light of the challenging year that we've had with the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, his government's response, and where we're going going, or he hopes that we're going in the next 12 months. We hope you enjoy the show, and we hope you tune in to the Premier's 48th Annual State of the Province address. My first guest today is the Honourable Dorothy Shepherd, the MLA for St. John Lancaster, the current Minister of Health, Ministre de la Santé depuis l'automne dernier, and a former Minister of Social Development in the Higgs government. Madam Minister, in the Conservatives' platform last year, there was talk about looking at revamping the whole mental health delivery system in the province. And at the same time, after forming government and after being appointed to cabinet, you announced that there was going to be a health care reform process. Could you talk about how that is all going to unfold in the next year to 24 months?
Absolutely, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. You know, the mental health action plan expired almost a year ago. And so we have a responsibility to table a new 5-year action plan, and this action plan will be directed to mental health and addictions. And I'm very excited about it. We will be presenting to government this week for ratification, and then we will be able to make it public next week. So we're very excited because it contains elements in our to adding to our healthcare system that we don't have right now, which would include walking clinics. We already have some exciting information about a soft launch that was done in Campbellton. So I'm not going to preempt the Premier on that, but I'm very excited to know that these have crucial implications for access to service in our communities, and we're going forward with that. Mobile mental health teams, we've been working with police and our CMP on implementing mental health professionals into practice with our law enforcement, and we're going to see some great results from that. I'm sure of it. And so that mental health action plan will be made public, I believe, next week, and I believe that the communities are going to be very happy to see that. And not only will this be a 5-year plan, but we will be constantly assessing and working on continuous improvement. So if we need to make tweaks, that's going to happen throughout this time frame. We won't just table a plan and be done with it. The health engagement, again, something I'm very excited about. We're doing over 40 engagements throughout the province, not only with communities, but with many stakeholders that will be contributing to tell us what their concerns are in their communities with regards to healthcare. I'm interested to understand what challenges are there. I think we have some challenges that we need to share with our communities to help them understand where we might need to go with regards to health review. And I want to understand their fears, because we know that past reforms have caused a number of unsettling fears. And I think that if we can approach this with communities as we bring forward potential solutions and hear about potential solutions, we're going to have a greater opportunity for success.
Will there be enough time? 12 months, 24 months, 36 months? Is there enough time to roll all of this out?
Well, for sure. Actually, in our COVID reality, I think that we can't really pinpoint a finish date for this health review, but I'm looking, we initially thought March, but understanding our COVID reality, that's already now been extended to April. And we don't want to put pressure on any community that may not be quite ready for this discussion. So if we find that some communities are under, stress because of our COVID reality, then, we will reschedule so that the conversation is meaningful. And as for implementing the changes, that's another part of the process that I believe is really crucial. And as we're proposing changes or working with communities to implement change with their help, we need to do that with them at the time. And so this, again, will not be a plan that we just finish up and table and set it aside and not look at it for another 5 years. This is going to be about continuous improvement and engagement in the community at the local level to know that what we're doing is the right thing.
Well, Minister Shepherd, Minister of Health, thank you for taking a few minutes to drop by just as we're getting ready to hear Premier Blaine Higgs deliver the 48th State of the Province address shortly. Minister Shepherd, again, thank you so much for dropping in.
I so appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Our next guest, notre prochain invité, David Kuhn, MLA for Fredericton South, député de Fredericton Sud depuis 2014. Since 2014, he's been the MLA for Fredericton South and leader of the Green Party since 2012. Welcome, Mr. Kuhn.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
Mr. Kuhn, what are your expectations? Now, you've done this a couple of years now. What are your expectations in anticipation of the Premier's State of the Province? What are you looking to hear the Premier say?
Well, he's going to have to address, and I'm sure he will address, two important areas. One is the response to COVID. This is a very different context, of course, for the state of the province addressed because of the pandemic. So I would expect him to speak to that, as well as speak to the longer-term vision of where he wants to take the province now that now that he has his majority government. With response to COVID, with respect to COVID, I would expect that he would be talking about some really important issues around, in the short term, how to ensure that people can comply with public health rules so that those who are working on a lower income can have access to paid sick days so they don't end up going to work with symptoms. They can afford to stay home, get tested when they have symptoms, and that's critical to be able to comply with the public health rules, as well as access to lodgings when people who don't have the means are able to afford to self-isolate as they're required to in a separate unit. So those are really critical things with respect to COVID. I would add, I think, two others. One is targeted support for small business. Right now, the initial baby step that's been taken to by the province with the $5,000 grant essentially is not sufficient because some small businesses have been really damaged significantly because of the nature of the business. I think of the hospitality industry, for example, those working in the arts, tourism. So there needs to be some specifically targeted programs for the hardest hit sectors in our small business world, and also to ensure that people and businesses who are not able to pay their cannot afford unreasonable rent increases, that there is legislative action to ensure that government has the ability, the authority to act if there are unreasonable rent increases involved. So those are the key things around COVID.
Now, there's a couple of big pieces coming or that have been announced, reforms to the healthcare sector and also the entire municipal reform with a dedicated minister. How will you keep the government accountable, or what will you be looking for in those two files?
Well, those are both very big and very important, and reform is needed in both of those areas. No question. Anyone who interacts with the healthcare system has a story to tell where they would like to see improvements. And so, it's big and it's multifaceted. So, in terms of access to primary health care, we would like to see an approach that involves a team-based approach to healthcare, so that you are not the patient of a single person, a family physician, but you're the patient of a team, which includes a physician, a nurse practitioner, other health professionals, a pharmacist, who can all communicate with one another about your case, about your file when necessary. That would make a huge difference. It could happen both in a community health clinic settings and also in more of an office-based setting, medical office. So there's different possibilities there. So that's important. Especially coming out of COVID, even more, there needs to be new investments in mental health care. We want to see him to announce, hopefully, during the State of the Province, the rollout of the walk-in mental health clinics that they're piloted in Campbellton, and those should be available to people around the province as soon as possible. I'm certain that the Hamilton pilot has worked well. On local governance, we're very much supportive of the idea that everyone should have access to local democratic institutions, so they've got real representation, not simply represented by the Minister of Local Government as their mayor. That's clearly not worked very well. But communities need the flexibility to determine what kind of a municipal entity they should become, and not be forced into illogical arrangements.
Mr. Kuhn, that's all the time we have for today. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for joining us. David Kuhn, the MLA for Fredericton South, député de Fredericton Sud, and leader of the Green Party, chef du Parti Vert. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks very much.
Our next guest is the MLA for Fredericton and Grand Lake, Chris Austin. He's been MLA for Fredericton and Grand Lake since 2018, but he's been the leader of the People's Alliance since 2010. So he's been watching the political scene for a while. Mr. Austin, welcome. What are your expectations today in anticipation of the Premier's State of the Province? What are you looking to hear or see in today's speech?
Well, considering we're still in the middle of a global pandemic, I'm sure there'll be discussions around COVID and government's response to that. But I think the key is really going to be to drill down into what government plans to do for the coming year, and what it has accomplished to date in relation to very important files. I mean, we can talk about healthcare, which we know the government's doing consultations around the province in relation to that. We can look at even the municipal reform, which is a huge file and a massive undertaking. And of course, there's a lot of rural residents that have a lot of legitimate concerns as it relates to taxation with municipal reform. So I'm anticipating something in the State of the Province in relation to that. Taxation, I'm hoping, is in the State of the Province, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of businesses that are really suffering, and it's usually the smaller businesses that are taking the biggest hit. And something we push for is things like the elimination of the double tax, because we can either help businesses through programs with handouts, or we can help businesses with tax reduction. And I've always favored tax reductions before the pandemic, and especially more so during the pandemic.
In this government's previous term, in the minority situation, you were sitting at the cabinet table with the COVID committee. How is that going? Are you still at the table? Do you have issues with that committee, or how is that rolling along for you?
I still sit on the COVID cabinet committee. It has at times been a rocky road, I guess, to put it in one way. It's a different scope. I mean, you've got 4 different parties that are being represented there. And of course, you got cabinet confidentiality. And something I've always said is in relation to the policies that are recommended by that committee, because government makes the decisions. We're there as a recommendation body only. But in order to make those recommendations, we need as much evidence as possible from the Department of Health and Public Health to be able to move forward. And, there's been some things on the committee that I have fully supported. And there's been others I've questioned. And, I think it's kind of walking that fine line to ensure that there's accountability, because, again, government makes the decisions, but at the same time, to try to work with the government to ensure that the policies are in the best interest of the province as a whole. But again, I guess my biggest concern in the committee over in the past and even to this day is just that the data and the information is getting to the public, and that we are getting the information to ensure we're making sound policy decisions or recommending sound policy decisions.
Now, you mentioned health reforms, you mentioned municipal reforms. Which of the two seems to be biggest on your agenda?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, health is a huge issue for most New Brunswickers. They want access to health care. But, I think if you look at, the population of New Brunswick and its size, how we deliver health care, how government delivers health care is the key point. And health care will always be a big issue. But when you look at municipal reform, that's a whole new ballgame. Long overdue. I think since equal opportunity, there's never been any real significant movement on municipal reform. But In the middle of that, our message has always been let the cities keep the property taxes that they're collecting, get rid of the double tax, and ensure that rural residents are not paying for budget shortfalls in the urban areas, in the municipalities, and in the cities. So there has to be that fine balance, and that's something we're going to, make sure that the government does what it needs to do in terms of those ideas.
Thank you for joining us today, Chris Austin, the leader of the People's Alliance, like I mentioned, since 2010, and the MLA for Fredericton Grand Lake since 2018. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate it.
Our next guest is the Honourable Arlene Dunn, the MLA for St. John Harbour, Députée de Saint-Jean-Havre. She was first elected last September in the 2020 elections. She has quite a hefty portfolio, but they all seem to interconnect. Minister responsible for economic development and small business, Minister responsible for Opportunities New Brunswick, Minister responsible for immigration, and Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. Thank you for joining us, Madam Minister.
Thank you for having me.
Madam Minister, since all of those portfolios interconnect, and we have an aging population in the province, an aging labor force, since you are responsible for immigration, how do you see your portfolio or the province investing more or developing more strategies to attract more immigrants to the province?
Well, as you know, immigration is actually going to be key to our future economic success. Recently, with my new Ministerial Economic Advisory Council, which is actually representational from businesses right across the province, Francophone areas, Anglophone areas, First Nations, rural, urban, the number one priority was actually population growth and immigration. This is something that is paramount to this government, and we know that over the next 10 years, we're going to lose about 120,000 workers. So this is something that we're significantly invested in and significantly actually doing tons of work around. So I think in terms of what we're doing, our target is about 7,500 a year. Sadly, because of some lapses on the federal side of things with respect to the fact that they don't have the human resource capital right now to process the applications, we're seeing a bit of a slow lull right now, but it's not going to prevent us from doing the work that we need to do to get done to get this moving.
Now, Madam Minister, we know it's a government initiative, but is there a role for the population to play in helping government attract immigrants to our communities?
Absolutely, there's a huge role. And I think that role has to be centered around diversity and inclusion. We have to be open and we have to welcome people with open arms. That is paramount. And we have to support one another and we have to connect to one another. And that's why community engagement is so important.
Are there any particular areas that you're looking at to engage our communities with the process that you have in mind?
Well, there's been lots of reach out in terms of the multicultural associations. And I think from the employer's perspective as well, that's huge. I know that, we're really, really focused on jobs. We're not just saying to people, come to the province of New Brunswick. We want to make sure that they have a sustainable way of life here. And that includes a good job.
Now, here's an interesting one for you. With the pandemic rolling out worldwide, a lot of us are working from home. We've had no choice to work from home. New Brunswick seems to be quite high on the radar to offer that to Canadians or Americans who want to find, good affordable housing, great communities. Is there any opportunity for New Brunswick to promote workcations or to promote workers to find a good spot to work from home and great communities and a great province?
We're actually doing some of that work now, and sadly, Nova Scotia get out ahead of us. But we actually have a campaign that we're going to be rolling out, which is the Live for the Moment campaign. We're going to be talking about New Brunswick and the awesome opportunity we have here in terms of work-life balance. And also the fact that we've been so safe through COVID. We've really managed that process so well. So it's an opportunity for large metropolises maybe to take some of their opportunities and send some of their employees our way. They have this opportunity in New Brunswick to work from this location. And I think that, you can work anywhere now in the world in terms of making sure that you have access to connections and stuff. So I think that that's actually elevated our discussions around broadband and the connectivity issue as well. So absolutely, we're going to try to see if we can attract as many people as possible to the province. Our target is about 150 people over the next 6 months, and we figure that's going to inject about $8 million into the local economy.
Very good. Well, we're out of time, Madam Minister, already. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on the numerous files, and sounds like there's exciting things about to happen on those fronts. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Merci.
Take care. Bye-bye. Merci.
Our next guest, notre prochain invité, député de Dieppe, MLA for Dieppe, now since 2010. He's been re-elected 4 times as the MLA for Dieppe. Leader of the official opposition, le chef de l'opposition officielle, Roger Melançon. Bienvenue, welcome.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Monsieur Melançon, on Monday, you issued a statement saying the Premier should include an economic and investment plan in his State of the Province address. Would that kind of plan cover everything that's needed going forward with the government's plans?
I think yes. I think tomorrow, State of the Province from the Premier needs to give hope to New Brunswickers. I think there's 2 key areas the Premier needs to focus is obviously to keep New Brunswickers safe through this pandemic from a public health perspective, but also we need to keep the economy healthy. And I think the State of the Province needs to show concrete, not only willingness, but example of where the Premier wants to see the province economically move forward to. This pandemic had a significant impact on all economies, and including New Brunswick. And that's why I made a clear proposal, made it public, where I believe as a Liberal caucus, where the focus should be economically in the province. The Premier should also recognize in his speech tomorrow that he needs to correct the wrong over the last year. When you look at the levels of investment comparable to all other provinces, New Brunswick, from the provincial coffers perspective, invested 26 cents per New Brunswickers in 2020. It's unacceptable. The economy needs to not only be sustained during this pandemic, but needs to be in a position after pandemic to be able to grow and strive again.
Now, you're saying the low investments at 26 cents per New Brunswicker, but we know that the Premier has a keen eye on the bottom line and the dollars and cents. With that being said, there's 2 major reforms also on the table that are being mentioned in the next 4 years, the healthcare sector and municipal reform with your colleague Daniel Alain. How impactful could those reforms be on the province as we're going forward?
Well, you know, those are 2 key areas that the Premier seems to be wanting to focus in terms of change and how government services are delivered. So the whole delivery model of those 2 areas and the governance model, obviously. What we have said when it comes to the health reform, we're concerned. We've asked the Premier to do 2 things. First, to delay the consultation process. People are focused on this pandemic. The healthcare professionals and experts are focused on dealing with the pandemic and trying to get people vaccinated at this time. Nobody's focused on change and reform. And that worrisome for us because we believe the Premier's got a secret agenda, who he knows exactly how he wants to make changes and what changes he wants to bring forward in healthcare, and it'll go below the radar. People won't pay attention to this reform. In terms of the governance or the reform in terms of the local governance, well, obviously we're open to having a dialogue, but again, this pandemic is creating a lot of uncertainty, and people are focused on their own personal health. Not a lot of people are focused on consultation right now. I'd put a pause just for now, allow people to focus on the pandemic, allow people to get vaccinated and to get in the position where then we can see meaningful consultation. We actually also proposed to do a legislative committee to undertake these consultation when it comes to healthcare. But the Premier, I've sent them a letter and to the Minister of Health, and obviously no reply.
Last question, dernière question, Monsieur Melançon. Do you think the Premier would listen to your call for a delay to these reforms?
Well, so far, no luck. Premier Higgs, all due respect to the position he holds, has got an agenda and a track record that listening to New Brunswickers, he may do, but he's not hearing what they're saying. So I really hope tomorrow's speech will actually bring some hope, some concrete evidence where this province needs to go forward. economically. And when it comes to reforms around healthcare and local governance, we know there needs to be some changes. We know there needs to be advancement in those two files, but we also know that the people of New Brunswick are not focused on that right now. And because of the pandemic, let's just put a pause. It's a short-term pause to allow meaningful conversation after pandemic, where people will have their energy, their focus on these potential changes and bring their ideas forward.
Monsieur Melançon, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time to discuss these issues. Bonne journée.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Our next guest, notre prochain invité, Daniel Alain, député de Moncton-Est, MLA for Moncton East, newly elected last fall, in the fall of 2020, ministre des gouvernements locaux et de la réforme de la gouvernance
Minister of Local Government.
Minister of Local Government and Local Governance Reform. Minister Alain, thank you for joining us. And I guess with the title for your department, it shows that the government is serious about municipal reform. Could you speak to that?
Yes, we are definitely, it's a priority for our government. Municipal reform has been talked about for the last, I would say, 25, 30 years. There's numerous studies that have been definitely discussed the subject, and we need to move forward. If we don't move forward, we'll lose opportunities, we'll lose infrastructure, and even worse, we'll lose services. So we want to make sure that the citizens of New Brunswick, the citizen itself, has the most information that we can do, move forward with the information, and move forward with solid policies for New Brunswickers.
Monsieur le Ministre,
Mr. Minister, we're saying that this municipal reform wasn't governed almost since the 1960s. This seemed like a very daunting reform. What can be done in the next 4 years? I'm convinced that the goal, it's a community project that will help solve as many problems. We want to put solid foundation, that we have something in the fall that we can go forward as we want to work on the structure, foundation, finances, taxing, regional collaboration, and also land use. So we'll be working on those issues. We've identified the issues themselves. We want to reduce repetition and have a better management, and also have better municipal map, so that the civil servants have better tools to serve the population.
Mr. Minister, worldwide pandemic, COVID-19, should we put this thought of reform on hold until we go through the pandemic and get to a place where we're more comfortable and safer? Or should we still plow ahead while your government and the public health officials are dealing with the pandemic?
What can I say on this? Democracy is not easy. We've seen what happened in Washington of late. If we don't take care of our democracy, things like that can happen. COVID is definitely not easy. I see Madame Russell, Dr. Liston working day in and day out with the Department of Health. They do presentations to Cabinet, to caucus, to my legislative colleagues also. So it's not easy to manage. But I can tell you one thing, that government reform will not be easy also. But I think we have to move forward. We have been working on this question now for the past 20, 25 years. And it's so important to move forward with an open, transparent, and frank discussion. And I think actually this is maybe an opportune time to move forward and have those discussions. So we'll have those discussions, maybe not in person, but I've met over 60 mayors. I've met over 60 LSDs also, because it's important. We can't forget the LSDs, that we have this discussion. We've elaborated a process where people we're going to have consultation by digital consultation, virtual meetings. We'll also have a process where we'll have a green paper in March. We'll have working committees during the summer. So let's hope by the summertime we're in yellow and we can have face-to-face meetings and with a white paper. So I think the process we've elaborated is conducive for a great discussion. and to maybe have this file move forward. As you know, as a government, the Premier's elaborated certain priorities that we're working in health, education, the official languages file, plus COVID, plus the finances in New Brunswick. So we have a lot on our plate. But I think this file can certainly move forward in this type of arrangement or exercise.
Well, Mr. Minister, with 104 local governments, over 230 local service districts, 12 regional services commissions in the province, it certainly sounds like a daunting project, but I know you're up to the task. Thank you for joining us today and giving us your thoughts on the municipal reform. Thanks again for being our guest. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always great to have an opportunity to talk to New Brunswickers. Merci beaucoup.
I'd like to thank all our
Thank
guests
you very much.
that appeared, in this pre-show portion of the annual State of the Province address. We invite you to stand by momentarily. We're going to go live to the floor of the Delta Hotel here in Fredericton, where the Premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, will deliver his 48th annual State of the Province address.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Klasi kog to Bamik, asking me to Bamik. Kita Kigo Mogostagwig, Pasil Dona Bamik. We welcome you from the unceded territory of the people of the beautiful and bountiful river, Woolistog, all my relations.
Bonsoir, Madame et Monsieur. It is an honor for me to again represent Siemens at the State of the Province address this year. Siemens is proud to be part of the New Brunswick business community, as this province has created an environment of trust and collaboration that enables us together to drive innovation and help solve some of the greatest challenges faced by humanity. The Smart Grid Atlantic project, together with our partners New Brunswick Power and Nova Scotia Power, is such a project. It will help facilitate energy transition not only in Atlantic Canada, but for the world. This research and development program has made exceptional progress in 2020, and I would like to share with you some of these highlights. In the Shediac Smart Energy Community Project, we saw work begin in over 480 participant homes with new technologies installed and continuing in this year. In the North Branch Smart Energy Neighborhood, the project was officially announced in December, and building lots in this neighborhood are now available for sale. The intention is to have up to 100 homes built in this leading-edge solar-powered neighborhood in Moncton. And at the heart of the Smart Grid Atlantic project is an energy system platform developed and deployed by Siemens. It's a cloud-based platform equipped with latest technologies, including artificial intelligence, to help utilities bring together and manage all these new technologies in the communities, but also introduce new future-oriented business models for their residents. Our journey continues as we set the stage to establish our Global Cybersecurity Operations Center at the new Cyberpark facility in Fredericton this spring. We are very proud and excited to continue our investment in New Brunswick and in jobs here. The future of electricity is being built right here in the province of New Brunswick. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Honorable Premier Higgs. Premier Blaine Higgs, member of the Legislative Assembly for Quispamsis, was born in Woodstock, New Brunswick, and graduated from the University of New Brunswick with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering. He worked for 33 years for Irving Oil, rising to senior executive level, overseeing oil transportation across Eastern Canada and New England. Premier Higgs retired from Irving Oil in 2010, and in September of 2010, he was elected to the Legislative Assembly representing Quispamsis. In October of that year, he was sworn in as Minister of Finance. Mr. Higgs was re-elected to the Legislative Assembly in September 2014, and in 2016, he was elected leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. On September 24, 2018, he was re-elected for a third time as the MLA for Quispamsis, and on November 9, 2018, he formed the first minority government in 100 years and became the 34th Premier of New Brunswick. On September 14, 2020, Premier Higgs was re-elected for a fourth time and formed a majority government, becoming the first Premier since Premier Bernard Lord to secure a second mandate from the people of New Brunswick. A long-term resident of Quispamsis, he's married to Marcia, and the couple have 4 daughters: Lindsay, Laura, who's married to Reed Gilmore, Sarah, who's married to Jeff Wilkinson, and Rachel, married to Matt Hills. They're also blessed with 4 grandchildren: Nadia and Alexander, Samuel, and Sadie. I'm pleased to welcome Premier Higgs to this year's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Fazal. I very much appreciate the introduction and your continued support of New Brunswick and what you're doing for us here as we develop energy resources and as we manage our energy future. I also want to thank Krista Ross and the Fredericton Chamber for the great work once again of organizing this event. You know, from where I am right now, the attendance seems to be down. Where I guess there's probably about 10 of us in this great big room at the Delta. I also want to thank my wife, Marcia, who has been a constant source throughout all of this, and certainly my time in politics and well before that, and as a continued valued advisor and long-term companion. 43 years now, I do believe, Marcia. Is that correct? I also want to relate to something that, Fazal, that you said about being the 34th Premier. Now, many of you who may have watched many interviews, and certainly today in COVID, most of the interviews are conducted online. And in my office, on Zoom or Teams, we work on different platforms. But you'll see in the background quite often on the wall a jersey of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the number on that jersey is number 34. Now, many of you may relate that if you watch hockey or you know the teams, that 34 is Austin Matthews' number. But in fact, that 34 is related to the fact that I am the 34th Premier, and I have signatures from all the premiers across the country. And that was given to me by the Premier of Ontario at an event we had with all the First Ministers back a few years ago when we could actually do that sort of thing. So it's quite a gift, and I'm probably someone that here can remember when the Toronto Maple Leafs last won the Cup. It was actually 1967. Good afternoon. Bon après-midi.
Good afternoon.
I'm very mindful of the fact that as we sit here today, our province continues to grapple with the second wave of COVID-19.
Many among you feel anxiety and uncertainty as to what the future holds for us. In addition, our dear ones are not close to us. More than ever, people in New Brunswick need that the government intensifies its effort, show integrity, compassion, and commitment as we do for one another on a daily basis.
It's more important than ever that we stay focused on our priorities. We need to continue to recognize the progress that is happening across our province and the people who are making it happen. When COVID-19 took hold, Scotiabank issued dire predictions for provinces right across the country. Their estimate for the province of New Brunswick's economy showed a decline in real GDP of 8.4% and a deficit of $1.2 billion. Our economic outlook suggests a decline of about half of this level, and our current projected deficit is actually $13 million.
Since the beginning, our reaction to this pandemic is very thoughtful and bipartisan. Now, we need to create balance to finance the workers, first-line workers, and also employers, while being careful with the taxpayers' monies and still building the future.
Since the pandemic struck, we have incurred incremental costs of approximately $200 million to help New Brunswickers get through this crisis. So anyone that says that we haven't spent money on our province needs to look at the reality. Over $200 million of new spending. In addition, we did not curtail any of our original planned capital expenditures for the fiscal 2020 and 21. Nous avons été disciplinés.
We were disciplined because we know that we'll be needing to be flexible regarding our budget in the future. We cannot foresee what the next phase of the pandemic will be. No one can do this. No one can foresee this or can foresee political instability, social or economic, that could be brought forward here and throughout the world.
We are being responsible, all the while delivering economic recovery and at the same time making progress on the pro-growth agenda I announced at the State of the Province a year ago. During this past year, New Brunswick has consistently led the country in jobs recovered, and our employment is now at 99% of pre-pandemic levels, according to Stats Canada. To get people back to work, we provided several supports, including up to $50 million in working capital loans for business, grants for nonprofits, an emergency fund for impacted New Brunswickers, and wage top-ups for essential workers. Our largest benefit, however, has been, wherever possible, throughout this pandemic, to keep businesses open and to avoid complete shutdowns. And while we've had a little setback right now, we are back on track. The numbers are coming down, and we're watching closely a hot region currently in the Northwest. But the focus that we have is to, wherever possible, to keep the economy moving, while at the same time balancing the health and safety of the citizens of our province. The
new projects working construction projects will indicate growth and trust. I am happy to announce that during the last months, New Brunswick is one of the first provinces in economic growth in the country, reaching its highest level since the last 3.5 years of December.
In our urban centers, we are seeing new housing starts at their highest in 10 years. When we look at apartment and condominium construction, we've set a new record, surpassing the previous one from 1972, almost 50 years ago. New Brunswick is on the map. It's on the map because people are looking at us as an area that has stability, an area that has focus, an area that has safety, and an area that's looking for people to come and live and work and invest right here. Real estate sales are smashing previous records in both volume and price. Sales and prices are up by 15% for the year, with gains touching all areas of the province. For example, in northern New Brunswick and the Valley region, sales set a record with a 20% increase. New Brunswick is more attractive than ever thanks to our people, our businesses, and our stability.
Even though we have a pandemic, our population has known growth in several areas. Moncton continues to grow at a very high rate, whether it's demographic, and it is now seventh throughout the largest cities in the country. We realize that we have a very high growth rate in the number of immigrants that are settling in rural communities.
This is very encouraging news, and it is helping us grow our population and our economy. Like all jurisdictions across North America, our retail and restaurant sectors have suffered through COVID, but our business owners have shown incredible resilience and ingenuity. They have adapted to their business models and found new ways to connect with consumers. Through this second wave of COVID-19, we will continue to assess impact and provide additional support deemed necessary. We are all working to come out of this together. We're all working to have a province that we want to live and work in once we're through COVID. We all want to have a tax structure that is fair and reasonable. We want to rebuild New Brunswick economy and rebuild it together to go well beyond what we had before COVID.
We can't take for granted the business spirit of our province. 7 individuals in New Brunswick out of 10 are hired within a small or medium-sized business. And nowadays, small businesses are very fragile. We must be very aware of our actions during the pandemic. We must all contribute to efforts to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Let's buy local products and also keep the businesses open.
While we still obviously have a lot of work to do, there is no doubt that the signs of recovery are strong. While managing the impacts of the pandemic, our government has been advancing key strategies to help businesses compete. We have
a recent strategy to put New Brunswick first, to help businesses to obtain contracts here at home.
We made significant changes to help local companies access more opportunities through public procurement. For example, we're now taking a best value approach versus just lowest cost. We are working to be more proactively connecting with businesses to opportunities, and we are streamlining and adjusting design specifications wherever possible.
I wish to thank the Economic Council and the Business Council of New Brunswick for their partnership in launching our plan.
When we talk about New Brunswick First strategies, we have a process where we evaluate now suppliers. We evaluate them in terms of what the value they bring to the province, how many people they employ. We do our specifications so that we actually look at what do New Brunswick companies have to offer. We also have an exemption as far as our trade agreements with other provinces, where we can look at projects on each one about $1 million, and then we have about 10 exemptions where we can look at projects and say what makes sense for us to look at in a New Brunswick company. And even though those exemptions weren't being used at all previously, we are using them now. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want the best value and we're not looking for the best value from every tender we issue as a government. It just means we're looking for ways to support our New Brunswick companies, no matter where they live and work in our province. Weeks ago, our government launched a 4-year local food and beverages strategy. The plan is designed to encourage farmers and producers to expand their current volumes and to increase the variety of available local products. In addition, we will educate residents on the importance of buying local and the career opportunities that are available within our agri-food, agriculture, and aquaculture and fisheries sectors. This is key for our province's self-sufficiency and growth. We saw during COVID that we rely on the import of fresh fruits and vegetables heavily, as well as some meat products. We have a number of projects underway to help farmers automate, to boost production, and to support year-round farming with more sophisticated greenhouses, tunnels, hydroponics, and enhanced storage and refrigeration. To support better education and address labor issues in farming, our workforce development plans includes curriculum to highlight agricultural careers. And we're actively working on an immigration pilot project for agriculture to attract farmers and to experience growing a variety of crops. We have equally also launched promotion campaigns in several groceries in the province, emphasizing our food basket local. So, True North salmon, striped bass from First Nation eel ground, lobster from Rocky Point in Westmoreland Fisheries, and oysters from Chibuktuk of Village Bay in Buktush. We've also been running by local promotions, numerous grocery retailers across the province, while focused on our NB food basket of products, including True North salmon, striped bass from Eel Ground First Nations, Rocky Point lobster from Westmoreland, and Chibuktuk oysters from Village Bay in Buktush. This is a great start, and I can assure you that we will lead by example with our government's purchasing power to buy local for schools and hospitals. Boosting local business is very important, but helping them tap into global markets is absolutely critical for our province's long-term economic health. Under ONB's new mandate, they've been working to help more New Brunswick businesses export. We are strengthening our presence in India and the EU by working with our federal partners and the Canadian chambers in these locations. ONB embraced virtual technologies early on in this pandemic to ensure that New Brunswick companies were continuing to connect with buyers and ultimately settling beyond our borders, and this is paying off. The companies participating in ONB led virtual trade missions. To date, they are projecting increased sales of about 26 million as a result of these virtual missions. I'm very happy to announce that our strategy works. New Brunswick now has more exports than at the beginning of the pandemic, and St. John is the only great Canadian city to know an increase in number of exports between October 2019 and October 2020. This is a great result for our province. You can see how I am so optimistic. It's easy to get excited about what we see happening in New Brunswick, especially right now in a pandemic, where everyone's looking around and saying, how do we get out of this? We're working our way out of it, but working our way beyond COVID and looking to the future of our great province. We are not just recovering as we work through the pandemic. We are indeed reinventing New Brunswick, and we are doing it together. And the momentum is taking hold everywhere, much of it through private investment, which is a strong vote of confidence that businesses want to be here and grow here. And oh yes, my critics can say we need to spend more of your tax dollars, and that's considered an investment. You know what I like to see is people who want to come with their own money and invest in our province and settle here and build here and expand here, because they are the ones that are going to rebuild our economy and do it right. It's not going to be increased taxes and increased spending by our government out of control. So I am excited about what I'm seeing for future investments and what I've already seen as investments. These companies, they want to be here because we are building the right kind of environment to foster growth. We've not raised taxes. We've embraced aggressive new targets for immigration to boost our workforce. We've supported investment in broadband connectivity. I'm confident we can have 5G connectivity throughout New Brunswick within the next 3 years. And we've met with major service providers committed to doing just that. We've launched a number of pro-growth initiatives, like our Navigator program, to help investors and existing businesses cut through red tape. And it's working. Let's take a closer look at how businesses are investing right now around our province. In Grand Falls, McCain Foods announced its commitment to an $80 million expansion. An estimated 80 new full-time jobs will be added to the production line once the facility expansion is completed. Lumber mills are benefiting from significant improvement in the tariffs on softwood lumber exports in the American market. This is good news for our mills and for the forestry industry. We are hopeful the U.S. will once again respect international trade fairness, and we will be successful in the complete removal of the tariffs on our softwood lumber. In Bathurst and Beldoon, Chaleur Sawmills just added a third shift to its Bathurst operation and a night shift to its Beldoon location. This has added 36 new jobs over the past few months. It's great news for Northern New Brunswick, and the increase in production will also mean more business for their suppliers, including private woodlot owners and First Nations. This represents a $14.5 million investment, with another $10 million planned. These are private sector investment. Toujours à Bathurst, la mine Caribou.
Still in Bathurst, the Caribou mine will open up again next month, thanks to a very important investment of $11 million to reactivate its activities. At the present time, they're proceeding with the hiring of 250 new employees, and they expect a possible expansion in Tracadie-Shiloh.
McGraw Seafood,
property of the Elsipogtog First Nation, has begun the construction of a processing plant of $20 million just a few weeks ago to support its expansion into the European market.
In English, the Bathurst Caribou mines will be reopening next month with a significant capital investment of $11 million over 2 years to reactivate the operations. Right now, they are in the process of hiring to fill 250 jobs. In addition, they already are planning the potential expansion. I was thrilled, as you might guess, a few weeks ago to get a call from the President and CEO about this reopening. The conditions were right. The economy was looking good, looking forward. It was prosperous, and they wanted to be back here in New Brunswick, working, living, and investing. In Tracadie-Shiloh, Elsipogtog First Nations owned McGraw Seafood began construction on a $20 million processing plant a few weeks ago to support their expansion into the European market. This will add much-needed jobs to the region and help open new export markets for our world-class seafood. In Centerville, Opportunities New Brunswick has been working with BWS, a heavy haul trailer company that continues to invest and expand. For years, like many local companies, they have been faced with a labor crunch to meet their current and growing labor needs. ONB facilitated a specialized in-house training program for welders that is certified through NBCC. The first cohort starts this month. En continuant notre traversée de la province,
as we go throughout the province, we can talk about the wonderful growth in Moncton. Mrs. Dunsters announced an expansion of more than $4.5 million for the construction of a new bakery. And thanks to the local people buying locally.
With over 100 new full-time jobs. Manic Trailers, the biggest manufacturer of semi-trailers in Canada, just announced it will expand its national presence with a new 14,000 square foot facility. Tech Mahindra continues to grow, recently reaching 250 employees. The company is a major link for us to India, where ONB is pursuing investment and workforce attraction. as well as export opportunities. And Moncton Industrial Parks reported a record level of activity in 2020, selling 91 acres of land that will increase private sector investment in the area. In St. John, we saw major news with a significant investment. CP Rail has returned to the Port of St. John and has brought one of the world's leading ocean cargo carriers, Hapag-Lloyd, along with them. This is a transformational development for our region, for all of New Brunswick. It will help open new and international markets for our businesses, increase export capacity, and drive job growth and further investment in New Brunswick. The Port of St. John
offers access to the markets throughout North America and the entire world through the highways, boats, and the railroad.
Growth. It must be led by the private sector, and the private sector is stepping up in a big way. Just last week, or a few weeks ago, LARC, a major developer of health technology districts, announced it has picked New Brunswick for its East Coast location, and it will construct 3 new buildings at UNBSJ. Investment for Phase 1, which could begin as early as late summer, is $30 million, and it will put local companies to work on what will be one of the most advanced health technology clusters in the world, right here in New Brunswick. The estimated economic impact from Phase 1 is up to a potential of $50 million annually to the local economy. I'd like to thank ONB and UNB for making this happen. This is exactly what we need more of, 100% private investment that will provide unparalleled economic and educational opportunities for years to come. And no matter where the investments are being made, it will spill over for the entire province. In Fredericton, Siemens continues to invest and grow in the province, and just recently shared with me they will have signed the lease securing space in Knowledge Park Cyber Building. This paves the way for the official opening and establishment of their global cyber security operations center, based right here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. This is exciting news because the potential continues for us to be a global leader in the energy supply and energy management. And just last month, Bell announced another $1.2 million to fund specialized training and research projects in UNB cybersecurity program. IntroHive, a B2B sales intelligence software firm, is making huge strides again this year. They continue to grow within the province and beyond. They were recently identified as one of Deloitte's fastest 50 technology award winners for the 2nd year in a row. This is a huge accomplishment. And you know, I never get tired of listening and talking about investment in New Brunswick and people stepping up, companies stepping up, and there's more and more that are doing that. Le COVID a mis en évidence la nécessité.
COVID has shown that we have to, the importance of offering large band services throughout the province, particularly in rural communities. Over the last month, Bell and Expornet have announced the expansion of their service, the large band services, to rural communities, and Starlink is testing its services by satellite. Last fall, Rogers added Fredericton and Moncton to its 5G program. We are proud to have been among the first to adopt 5G, which will give our people and our businesses additional opportunities to innovate and develop.
We are truly differentiating our province's strengths and attracting investment by thinking differently. As we do this, we are keeping an eye on our carbon footprint and look to clean, emission-free energy sources wherever and whenever possible. Since taking office, our government has been making steady progress in our strategy for small modular reactors. 2 years ago, New Brunswick signed a memorandum of understanding with Ontario and Saskatchewan to advance Canada's position. This fall, NB Power, ARC Clean Energy, and Moltex officially joined forces with the province to create an SMR cluster right here in New Brunswick. We are leaders in this worldwide initiative, and it is a game changer for our province at a time when it's needed most. That is why our government will invest to support the development of this sector. I am announcing today a $20 million investment in our clean energies technology, which will unlock significant private sector investment. I'm also pleased to acknowledge the continued cooperation and support from the federal government as we look at SMR clusters here in New Brunswick. And I look forward to future announcements with the federal government colleagues so that we will continue to expand our footprint right here in New Brunswick as a worldwide energy provider. Nous sommes convaincus que grâce à cet investissement,
we are convinced that thanks to this investment, not only are we supporting the development of local expertise, but we are contributing also to the creation of a critical mass to attract the best talents, which will enable other businesses to grow.
We have an underutilized supply chain with existing industrial and mechanical businesses right across this province. And we could activate to participate in a worldwide SMR market and bring that revenue back to New Brunswick. That's what this opportunity means to us here. We're putting New Brunswick back on a map as a global emissions reduction leader and will be at the forefront of this emerging sector. While all that I've shared is obviously extremely positive, we do need to be cautious and continue to confront our challenges. We know that our priorities for a robust economy, population growth, and improved health care rely on having vibrant and sustainable communities. Notre gouvernement a annoncé les détails de la première phase de notre processus de consultation.
Our government has announced the details of the first phase of the consultation process on local governments. We're also publishing a green paper this spring to seek more participation of the general public in this very important issue. We're looking for innovative ideas, opportunities for regional collaboration and ways to make our communities more autonomous. The comments and the analysis of the stakeholders will then be used to develop an action plan before the end of the year.
Another challenge is health care. With an aging population, the demands on our healthcare system will only continue to grow, and we must act decisively to prepare for tomorrow's needs. We're improving wait times. We're on track to cut the wait list for primary care in half by March. We're making steady progress on reducing wait times from as long as 3 years to 6 months for hips and knees surgeries, and do so by the end of 2021. We're centralizing where it makes sense, like our COVID testing labs at the George L. Dumont University in Moncton. And we are consulting on other opportunities to further leverage technology, improve mental health, and recruit specialists. The Department of Health will soon be unveiling the 5-year Addiction and Mental Health Action Plan, which focuses on 5 areas, including improving access and same-day walk-in services for lower intensity needs. This approach has already been successfully piloted in Campbellton, and it has helped them eliminate the wait times for mental health and addiction services in that area. It's a pilot project that has been extremely successful. I met with the Minister of Health recently and she's so excited about what potential this has for the rest of the province. Mental health and addiction services is a key platform promise that we must deliver on. We have the opportunity to help more New Brunswickers participate in our economy. There are 80,000 New Brunswickers between the age of 25 and 64 who aren't in the workforce. We have so much untapped potential in this province. Our nonprofits see it every single day, whether they are supporting stronger literacy, working to equip people with employment skills, or helping our most vulnerable, including those living with disabilities. I want to thank them for their tremendous contribution. Our government is working with dozens of groups around the province to help transition people to greater opportunities. For
example, we recently announced a support of $6 million to the group a rising tide in Moncton to increase their ability to help people who are homeless. Our government grants help people
we funded a number of workforce training
obtain
programs to provide
transportation
certifications and workplace preparedness for laborers, personal support workers, international students, and immigrant youth. We know there's still much more to do. We have heard your concerns from across the province about affordable housing and rent increases in recent months. That is why we will conduct a 90-day review of the rental situation in New Brunswick. We will be evaluating the market, vacancy rates, rental fees, and trends, and the impact COVID-19 is having on all of our citizens. We must engage more New Brunswickers to solve some of our most persistent challenges. We must all be ready for change and to be part of the solution. We must be willing and open to look at new ways of doing things, new ways that COVID has taught us, new ways to reset not only our economy, but how we deliver services, and not be caught in the same old mold because it's always the way we've done it. We need to analyze what each one of us do every day and the contribution that we make. And it can no longer be taken for granted that we can just say, well, government will pay for it. Government is your representative dispersing your tax dollars. And my commitment to you is to do it for results that you feel directly at home or when you're out throughout our province, you see the benefits of your tax dollars at work. There's also issues and threats that we have to watch from the outside. As we move towards a cleaner energy and smarter environmental choices, we must strike a balance that makes sense for all stakeholders. You've been listening to me for many years now talk about a transition to a greener, cleaner economy. Our government has taken steady, strong action to improve environmental impacts. We have reduced our carbon emissions by 28% since 2005, and we're on track to meet our share of the national target by 2030. We've made historic gains on our protected and conserved lands, going from 4.6% to 10%. We're clearly committed and being responsible. However, being responsible means taking your time to understand all impacts of regulations, no matter how well intended. I am very concerned of what I see for new federal regulations and what that means to the New Brunswick economy. We have a very diverse sector with many adjacent businesses that create world-class products. As a whole, our manufacturing sector contributes $3 billion a year to our GDP. That's nearly 29,000 jobs and accounts for 9.8% of our economy. We've already seen a significant drop in oil prices and disruptions to supply chains around the globe due to the pandemic. At the same time, we are seeing an unprecedented increase in new regulations imposed by the federal government. The future federal plans around carbon pricing and clean fuel standards together will create a perfect storm in New Brunswick. Costs for our provincial utility alone could rise by 25%, and that's just with the federal government's new carbon rules. That does not take into account the changes that will be made in terms of production that will cost us more in many other ways and ultimately show up in our homes. In New Brunswick, we have a very high, I think it's around 80% of homes that are space heated with electricity. When I look at our oil and gas sector particularly, I am concerned. The new federal regulations that are envisioned could result in devastating impacts for the St. John refinery and for the reliability of fuel supply. If we aren't using our own oil products as long as we're using them, and if we don't have our own refinery, as long as we need those resources, we will then up buying them from someone else if our own regulations in our country shut down our businesses. Countries that don't necessarily have the same human rights and environmental standards that we do here in Canada. We are in a transition. Let's not, and you've heard me say this before, let's not just shut the lights out and hope for the best and wander around in the dark. Let's manage our future. Let's have a plan at how we transition and do so that you can afford to live and work here in our province. One of the most significant learnings from COVID is that we must become more self-sufficient, whether it's food, medicine, or energy. We don't want to be over-reliant on resources from other countries. For our economy, they are estimating provincial GDP will decrease by 0.5%, or $208 million by 2030, the second worst impact of those new regulations next to Newfoundland. So the second worst impact in the country. This effect will have on vendors, suppliers, workers in our communities, and our province's autonomy cannot be overstated. Nous reconnaissons
We recognize that we must go to a greener economy, but we have to do so in a methodical way.
We will continue to work together to balance our economic and environmental stability. When I think of what we've gone through over the past year and think of the years prior to COVID, who knew that amidst a global pandemic, I would be standing here sharing highlights of well over $200 million in new private investment projects, new capital expansions, new equipment for automation and productivity, new buildings, and new production lines. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I could carry on and list another 100, 200 million that is in the hopper that companies are looking at and where they might to continue to expand their operations or start new. Amidst very challenging environments, our private sector continues to seize growth opportunities. Since April 1st, ONB clients alone are working towards creating upwards of 1,700 new jobs, putting skilled New Brunswickers to work and creating future opportunities for our youth. That will translate into over $219 million in new provincial GDP contribution. Les nouvelles entreprises continuent.
New businesses continue to turn towards New Brunswick, and when they do, they like what they see. What do they see? It's cooperation as never they've seen it before, a feeling of urgency to improve. This is a testimony for all the people of New Brunswick.
Like the people who are stepping up to take care of our seniors, those who are protecting our borders, teaching our children, working the front lines, driving trucks, stocking shelves, and working the checkouts to keep supply chains going. These people and many others embody the determination and the empathy that New Brunswickers have long been known for. We have seen throughout this pandemic people standing on our borders, and our borders are directly connected to areas that have high levels of outbreaks, as we know, whether it be the Quebec border or whether it be the border to Maine. We have many people that are transiting every day for economic and employment reasons back and forth across these borders. And it's the diligence of those that have been watching and controlling and ensuring that they protect themselves and each other that has allowed us to work successfully through this pandemic and to see the progress as we work out the other side. This will be a situation we'll continue to be in until the vaccines are present and we're able to reach at least a 70% vaccination rate. I want to thank Dr. Jennifer Russell and everyone in public health. I want to thank members all over the civil service, leaders across the civil service, my colleagues in government, both my colleagues in cabinet and my colleagues in caucus that have been diligent through this process. I want to thank the opposition members and the all-party COVID Cabinet Committee as we have worked together to make decisions in the best interests of our great province. I also wish to thank Cheryl Hansen, New Brunswick's first real Chief Operating Officer, with overall responsibilities for government operation and public service delivery. Throughout this pandemic, Cheryl has worked countless hours and weekends, and her team have blurred the departmental lines, requiring the government of New Brunswick to operate as one entity, to face the daily COVID challenges. Throughout this COVID experience, Cheryl and her team have been finding new ways to deliver services, new ways to question the status quo, and to say we're not going back. We're not going back to where we came from. We're going beyond COVID. We're going to move in a direction that sees our province thrive and survive and grow and have confidence. We're changing the very culture of how people feel about New Brunswick. It's in the air. We see it. We see it all around us with the investments, not only in private sector businesses, but investment in real estate, investment and people wanting to come home. I would say that people listening today can all think of somebody now who wants to come home. Let's think about a few years ago when we could all think of somebody who had left. I think it's exciting times for New Brunswick. This has been a difficult experience, managing through COVID, and it is still difficult. And many have lost loved ones as a result of this pandemic. But we will persevere, and we will come out the other end, and we will have vaccines administered this year, and we will see our province again thrive and survive beyond where it's ever been. We will see a renewed New Brunswick that is going to meet not only the challenges of today, but the challenges of tomorrow. Nous efforçons tout d'être le meilleur possible.
We want to be the best possible. We cannot miss this opportunity to change and improve things.
COVID, although it's been discouraging for all of us and devastating to many, no one has been untouched. And while we can feel good about the success that we've had during much of the pandemic, the second wave we are currently experiencing is undoubtedly and has been a setback. The trends are better now, and we're hoping just to continue that and get back to where we were and get back to an Atlantic bubble. It is easy to give up. It's easy to walk away. And there's so many reasons, though, for us to be hopeful that we can't do that. We must continue to persevere through this. We see the end of the pandemic, but we can't take it for granted. The new variant is a major concern, with infection rate capability so much higher. But I'm excited about what I'm seeing for potential in every part of this province. I'm excited that if we pull together as we've been through the pandemic, we will do even better things as we move together after COVID is long gone. But we will put what we've learned during COVID into building a brighter future. We will not accept the status quo. Our plan is working. The momentum is real. I feel it around the province because I get messages from around the province. You feel it from your communities because you see it. You see things moving. You see people wanting to be part of what New Brunswick is doing. We are showing the world what we can achieve. But we can't do it alone. We need to do it together. And together, we are reinventing New Brunswick. Ensemble, nous réinventons.
Together, we are reinventing New Brunswick. Thank you.
And now, in just a few minutes, I'll be taking questions from Krista Ross and the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, so please stay tuned.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Balfour, President and CEO of Emera. On behalf of our team in New Brunswick and elsewhere in Atlantic Canada, I'd like to thank Premier Higgs for his 2021 State of the Province Address. This has been a valuable opportunity for all of us to learn more about the challenges and opportunities facing New Brunswick, our region, and the country. Thank you, Premier, for your insight on your government's strategic plans. At Emera, we understand that the best opportunities and solutions happen when government and the private sector are aligned and work together to build a brighter future. From our home base here in Atlantic Canada, we've grown Emera from a single utility to a $32 billion energy leader. We're safely delivering cleaner, affordable, and reliable energy to more than 2.5 million customers in 6 different countries. We know firsthand what a great place this is to grow a business. And we did it by building strong relationships, staying true to our Atlantic Canadian values of doing the right things, doing them well, working collaboratively to achieve even more than we could on our own, and making real and honest efforts to invest in our communities and make our region stronger. I know I speak for many when I acknowledge the strong leadership of Premier Higgs on many fronts, but in particular as he joined with the other premiers and public health officials in the region to coordinate and execute a safe, balanced, and world-leading response to COVID-19. As the pandemic continues, thank you for your ongoing commitment to keeping New Brunswickers safe. Thank you to the Fredericton Chamber for adapting the format this year to continue to provide the opportunity to hear directly from the Premier and to engage in this important dialogue. We look forward to the Premier's ongoing strong leadership and to continued regional collaboration in 2021 and beyond. Thank you and stay safe.
In recognition of our valued sponsors for the 48th Annual Fredericton Chamber of Commerce State of the Province Address, we are proud to acknowledge the support of these Chamber member companies. This year, with a virtual event, we were not able to accommodate all of our usual sponsors. However, we are thankful for the following companies and organizations who were able to participate. Our platinum sponsor is Siemens Canada. It's incredible to say thank you to this long-term sponsor. This is their 9th year as our platinum sponsor. Your support for this event is instrumental in its success. Our gold sponsors are Emera New Brunswick, who provided thanks to the Premier for his address, and Rogers NB, who has broadcast this event to the province for as long as anyone can remember. Thank you for your loyal support. Our pre-show sponsor this year is the New Brunswick Medical Society, and we thank them, with special thanks to our pre-show host, Gilles Alain, Executive Director of the Chalmers Foundation. Coming up next is our Q&A with Premier Higgs and CEO Krista Ross. This could not happen without the sponsorship of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of New Brunswick. We are so appreciative of our marketing sponsors, Bell Alliant, KPMG, and Stuart McKelvey, who supported our communication and marketing efforts for the 48th Annual State of the Province Address. A special thanks to all of our bronze sponsors, Delta Fredericton, who provided our host location for this year's virtual event. Exclusive Events, thanks for dressing up our stage and the Q&A set. Kiers Marketing, you always do an awesome job creating our marketing and social media materials for State of the Province. Rob Blanchard Photography, for capturing photos of our Premier delivering his address for us to share with our members. Robert Simmons, who provided a great outfit for our CEO Krista Ross to wear during the Q&A with the Premier. Signature Sound, for making sure the event is a technical success and tying together all of the sound, lights, and visuals for everyone to enjoy. In addition to our event sponsors, we would like to give a very special thanks to our legacy sponsors, those who have supported the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce and this event year after year. Although we could not have you involved this year due to the virtual nature of the event, we wanted to show our gratitude for your long-standing support, and we're definitely looking forward to working with you for next year's event. Our legacy sponsors are Fredericton Convention Centre, University of New Brunswick, Opportunities New Brunswick, Aditya Birla Group, AV Group NB, Atlantic Lottery, BDC, the New Brunswick Association of CBDCs, Fredericton International Airport Authority, Forest NB, New Brunswick Real Estate Association, NBCC, Rocket, formerly Taylor Printing Group, and the Ginger Agency. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors. Thanks again to our sponsors for the 2021 Fredericton Chamber of Commerce State of the Province Address. Thanks to everyone who is watching from across the province and beyond. And of course, thank you, Premier Higgs, for your address today. In appreciation of your participation in the 48th Annual State of the Province Address, we have made a donation to the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce Scholarship in your name. I'd like to say a very special thanks to the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of New Brunswick for sponsoring the Q&A portion of our event. We asked our more than 1,000 chamber members, as well as chambers of commerce from across the province and their members, to share with us questions that they wanted us to ask you today. So I'm going to start with some questions about the post-pandemic recovery. First of all, what do you consider the greatest challenge in rebuilding the New Brunswick economy post-COVID?
As I talked a lot in my address, confidence. It's confidence that we can do this. There's some big challenges that I mentioned at the end about on the energy sector and the energy file and our economic viability going forward. I have been very cognizant of the years after COVID, and that's why I've been, we asked for real results. We asked for information on what's needed, what's not needed in real terms. So I want our province not to be here looking back next year and say, wow, I could have managed that better. I'm having real trouble now meeting some very basic needs because of where we are financially. I still am focused on not costing people more to live and work in New Brunswick. I want to actually improve on that so people will still continue to look here. And I think COVID, despite all of the very significant downside that we've seen through health concerns and loss of life, has caused us to refocus on what's important and to really make decisions for the long haul. And it's pulling families closer together, and it's pulling an interest not just to live for today, but plan for tomorrow.
What's the recovery plan for air service, given its importance for business, for tourism, conferences, and just general economic growth?
So it is extremely challenging throughout the nation, as you're well aware. And yes, we've been hit hard here in our province, as other provinces. When I've met with the airlines, and they talk about that they don't see a full recovery for 3 to 4 years, kind of in that time range. So I think what we do in working with organizations and chambers is understanding what is needed, what do companies need, what do people need to get back traveling again. And I think we're a year or so out before people are going to feel comfortable traveling. But once the vaccines are done, let's say done this year, next year, 2022, could be a different story. Let's be strategic about how we start back up. Let's make sure that what we are doing and working with airlines directly is what's important to both business and individuals to start a recovery on the air service. And I've commissioned a study, as you know, looking at that in our province. And I don't know what that'll look like, but it's trying to just understand what is strategic, what do we need, and let's make sure that we maximize our growth back. And as I say, I'll continue to meet with airlines in that process because we need to be in sync here with their investment back in our province.
Well, we're glad you're asking those questions because we at the Chamber of Commerce are happy to tell you what we believe the business community needs, and we're looking forward to being part of that process.
You have to be part of the process.
Several prominent New Brunswick economists have suggested that in order to finance a post-COVID recovery, making smart investments to support the economy should be more of a priority than maintaining a balanced budget. What are the smart investments that you think we should be making?
Well, I've said for a long time that we need to change the philosophy that some way that if we put money into something, it's going to get better. And I've seen us put money in a lot of things that at the end of the day, you can't figure out whether it had any impact or not. You wouldn't do that in your private life, and you wouldn't do it you shouldn't do it in public life either. So while it may make a headline, it doesn't necessarily change your ability to do anything better. Our pilot we've done up for mental health and addiction services in Campbellton is working. And for us to continue to invest in that program, similar program around the province, makes sense because we got a model that works. If you look at service delivery in the province, when we were looking at the hip and knee, we're making a change in that and committing to results. So there's a very key strategic difference in my philosophy. I believe that every tax dollar spent should have a corresponding result that they feel good about, that they feel like are getting value. So it's not a headline on how much you spend. It's a headline of how much you've actually done. And I'm feeling very confident in what I've seen and what we're seeing for results from private sector investment, but what we are seeing for results in the system of how we're delivering better service. And it's only just begun.
How does your government feel about finding a way to support business through payment extension, reduction, elimination of penalties, or maybe even forgiveness of property tax?
So we have been through this process. We've delayed payments. We've delayed interest payments. We've had the Navigator program I mentioned here that's been going for a year and a half or more. It was set up and it just worked through the COVID process to actually analyze a business's situation. So everyone should say, how can I get through this? Because we're all trying to get through it. I know some businesses have seen increased sales and a change because of different models, but many have not, especially in the tourist and accommodation sector. So we've asked each one to come to us. I've asked ONB to evaluate their particular situation, and then let's look at what role government can play. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not, here it is, find a way to spend this. It's like we want to be helpful in real terms. And if there's a problem, a real problem, we'll find a way to work with the individual or the business to get through this. And that's been the model from the start.
Looking beyond the post-pandemic recovery, I'd like to get your thoughts on a few economic opportunities that our business community has identified. One was already mentioned in your remarks and by Minister Dunn. In addition to New Brunswick's already high quality of life, the Atlantic region has been one of the safest places in the world during the pandemic. How can we best leverage this opportunity to attract individuals and businesses to our province to locate?
You know, you've hit right on it, actually, because New Brunswick has been recognized nationally and internationally, and it has made a difference when people say, what's going on in New Brunswick? And yes, we've had a little setback, but we're living right next door to the hot zone. I mean, our province is the gateway to the Atlantic region, and we're the ones that have been holding the fort on the borders. And with like 3,700 people a day, about 3,000 stopping in New Brunswick to work or transition, and about 700 going on through, we have exposure there that we have been facing throughout. So people are recognizing that. So how do we leverage that? We're now promoting, and you heard Minister Dunn talk about the promotion that we're putting forward about you can live and work here in New Brunswick. I have a daughter who lives and works in Bangkok, but she's been home since July because she is not able to go back to Bangkok, but she's working online from New Brunswick. So it's real. You know, this ability to work anywhere and live in New Brunswick is real. That's why the focus on connectivity and the 5G and the commitment in 3 years' time throughout our province is real. It's going to be a priority. It is a priority. And I believe we can make it happen, because I think that is one of the probably first things people are looking at today in their business is what kind of reach do we have socially through the social network around the world. And it's important that we get there.
Absolutely. There is a flip side to encouraging people to come here and work remotely, though, and that is that in our local economies, we want people to get back to their offices and get back to working in the communities and being able to support the businesses that are in their proximity. How do we balance that? And are the provincial employees fully back in their offices?
So I think we balance it by getting bigger. I mean, so we have people doing both. So I mean, we know rural areas have for a long time been moving into the urban centers. I do think this pandemic will cause more people to think about living in rural New Brunswick. So that connectivity is important. But if you think about the focus on New Brunswick as a whole, well, if you're living in Toronto right now, you look at Fredericton and say, boy, I'd love to live in a city the size of Fredericton. Along the river, it's beautiful. That's where I'd like to go. And so you have a perspective there from different sides, but you know that's not an urban center that's a problem for me to move out of Toronto. So I guess my point would be thinking that we can balance this through, because there's going to be people that just want to live in a smaller sized community. We would have most of our people that are back, I don't know the exact percentage, but not everyone. We went through still in orange, and those that are able to clearly work from home are doing that, but I don't know the exact percentage.
In your speech, you referred to the investments that our platinum sponsor, Siemens, have made in our province, and most recently they have signed a lease to move into the Cyber Center here in Fredericton. It's estimated globally there will be 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity by 2022. Considering that we have a depth of cybersecurity expertise here at UNB, the work of CyberNB, our growing cyber cluster infrastructure like the Cyber Center, the newly announced MBA program in cybersecurity at the University of Fredericton, what more do you see your government doing to leverage these assets and to more aggressively promote and support this critical growth opportunity?
I think, and I've asked for this, to identify clearly the companies that can reach worldwide in terms of providing a service, and the ones that are maybe worldwide that need the service. What ONB have done with many companies, and I know they've done it with, let's say, some of the bigger organizations that have worldwide reach, and they basically connected our local companies with them to provide a service, and then that service then is provided for their operations in other parts of the world. And there are some very good examples of that. And I think that in the case of cybersecurity, the same thing applies. I had met with IBM before the pandemic, and they were looking at expanding and relocating into the cybersecurity building, but things changed a lot after the pandemic, and people have a new focus on where they're going to go or how they're going to structure. And I think, to your point earlier, many companies have said, I don't need everybody working in the same spot. So we have to kind of rethink what is needed in that regard. But I'm always interested. You give me a specific situation, and we'll find a specific answer. Not the generalities, but I need to get access to this business or this company, and I need government to help us make those connections. We're in.
So that's talking a lot about some of the big companies that might be in those industries. What is the plan for supporting startups?
So we have a program with ONB in terms of the startup, and I've often said in case of investments, what my philosophy has been is that, you know, we recognize that government plays a role in helping companies get up and running, and especially a complete new startup. And the philosophy that I think is relevant is that when you look at how government has spent money in the past in terms of startups, our success rate as a government is not very good in loans and grants and guarantees and actually supporting it. And we carry, you know, as a government, about $500 million of liability for poor loans and grants and guarantees, and you saw $50 million get written off here not long ago. I believe that government can play a role, and yes, there's a risk, but it's a risk government can take. But if the company is a success, government should get back its investment to invest to someone else. So you basically have an economic fund that continues to work for you and continues to work for the taxpayer. And, you know, not all will be successful, but it's like, you know, we believe in the SMR program. We believe it is a future for New Brunswick and the worldwide energy solution, and we're investing. Yes, it's a change, it's a different philosophy, but life is changing. So I think people can see that we're willing to step out and invest. But let's find a strategic way that we are seen and we are responsible with tax dollars.
So a lot of these startups, or those in the cyber industry that we're talking about, they're in the innovation sector. New Brunswick last had a new innovation strategy published in 2018. Some say it's time for a new one. What is your plan to create a new provincial innovation strategy?
So I know that is something that ONB is looking at in what that might be. I think we should get on to a better portion of our ongoing budget that is innovation related, investment related, research and development related. I think likely in a 2% range, where we're usually about 0.5%. I think that we have to have that ongoing commitment, but there also has to be that ongoing evaluation. So it's not just money that's there to be spent, it's money that's there to get a result. So I believe ONB is working on that as an update, and I will follow up on that following this discussion.
Thank you. You've identified that returning the province to 2% GDP growth and growing the population would be achieved with exports and private sector investment. In fact, today you mentioned that one of our chamber members, our Clean Energies Technology, you'll be investing $20 million in that. And that should unlock significant private sector investment. What do you see as the trajectory for this project?
It is, speaking of how we manage that going forward, and I mentioned the federal government and the participation of the federal government in this, because this is a big, huge initiative. And it will need federal government support. I mean, we are kicking it off. It's a second investment round, but we will need, and that's why I mentioned the federal government, because we have been in talks with them. I do expect to hear announcements in that regard from the federal government, and because it is initially financially heavy. It has great potential. In New Brunswick alone, about 190 million, 200 million, as you point. But it has great potential going forward. So, but it will need a federal partner.
We see a lot of potential in the supply chain opportunities for our members as well.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
One other way to meet GDP growth targets is to look at traditional natural resource export sectors that can be modernized, that can be innovative. What steps are being taken to encourage investment in R&D, to improve regulation and marketing, to encourage growth through opportunities that the bioeconomy offers?
So with ONB, the ONB mandate, if we went back to that from last fall or last year at this time, the whole concept in ONB wasn't, you know, I've got a budget of 50 million, I need to spend it some way and get rid of 50 million. It was, how do I find ways to service my clients? And their clients are businesses. And their whole mandate now is just that. And they have a list that they work from in relation to, and a criteria. So when people come to them, they have a process they follow now through Navigators. So we're seeing a renewed interest in that. And also, my question to them is, don't give me a general red tape reduction program. Tell me what regulations really are a problem, and then let's find a way to fix them. And so we actually get some done. And I've said this to many businesses. What's your top 5 annoyances with government? And give me the list. I mean, I'm an engineer. I like lists, and I like targets. And so if this is the top one irritant, or this is the one that is really a problem for us, I want to know that. And, you know, just as municipalities in the province put together their 5 priorities, and I know we've worked on 2 of them, and we're working on the other 3. That's what I'd like to see from chambers or from any organization or businesses. Give me specifics. I had a company, you know, pushing hard to get the 2015 regs, the building codes adopted. Well, you'd think by 2020 we'd have that done. Well, we have it done now. But we want to keep up. And the best way we keep up is people telling us directly what their problems are.
Well, we will continue to feed you information about red tape reduction and what our members are telling us.
Perfect.
The next few questions I want to ask you are actually in relation to the hardest hit sectors. A shout out for the establishment of the Business Navigators program that has helped our members to get information on programs and regulations. Every industry seems to have been impacted by COVID-19, but some have really faced the brunt of economic hardship. They're vulnerable. The same way that we have vulnerable populations that are susceptible to COVID-19, we have vulnerable businesses. Tourism industry is one. And given that tourism and hospitality are the 3rd largest sector in our economy, is there a plan in place to allow them to access the recovery grant or some other type of provincial support? HASCAP funding is for loans, and many in the sector say they can't take on any more debt.
And I understand that. And we did introduce a rebate program when we were in yellow. I mean, we had another one rolled out for the winter, and then we had to pull back on that. Maybe we'll get a piece of that next month, hopefully, but time will tell. But we have asked to, again, the 5,000 money that we looked at in order for a grant, more or less, is to evaluate businesses. But I guess we know that everyone has taken a financial hit during this, or for the most part. And we know tourism and accommodation has been the hardest hit. So we have to look at what is the recovery. What does it look like? COVID year is not going to be like past years. We're not going to be able to reinstate the financials from the year before. But what is it that it takes, or what is a must to keep this business thriving? And we also look at, okay, were there problems prior or not, or was it successful until COVID, and was it all COVID? And then we work with the individual company to figure out, okay, how do we survive? Because our goal is to keep people going. Not to say I earned as much in COVID as I did last year, but I survived COVID. And now I have a potential to go beyond COVID. That's our goal.
Another sector is the restaurant and beverage industry. They have lowered capacity, they have increased regulations, there's a lack of travelers, there's a lack of events, they have party size restrictions. Restaurants are hurting more than most sectors. With the limited support mechanisms in place, how can they cope? What more can we do for them?
Well, as I mentioned if you look across the country and you look at New Brunswick and the Atlantic region, we've kept businesses open. More so than any place. We shut down early in the March of last year, but this was the first time we actually got back into an extended orange, and then of course the Moncton and the Evanston area changes that we had to go through. So we've tried to keep them open, and we knew the single family bubble thing was really hurting businesses, whether it be restaurants particularly. So we got back to, a single family, but plus 10. So we could get them back in business, because we've been told that this, the previous thing, can we do something differently? Because this just does not work. And as much as I enjoy going out to dinner with my wife, after a while, the restaurant saying it's got to be more than just you two. So it's like, how do we keep businesses going? and recognize the shortfalls in each case. They're not going to be the same as before. Our goal will be to continue to open the doors up more and more. If we get this under control, recognizing what the variant potential is, because that's the unknown right now, that's very concerning. I'd just like to say we see light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines and understanding this variant, that we continue to allow people to be more and more active. I do have to caution the variant thing, because that is a concern for us, and we've seen how quickly that spreads. So that is the unknown at this stage.
The retail sector wasn't mandated to close in the red face, but it was really communicated by government that people should stay home as much as possible, go to school, go to work, go to medical appointments, essentials, that's it. Are you considering supporting the retail sector with the Small Business Recovery Grant?
Yes, we are. They're part of they should be applying for that, and we will consider that.
Okay, good to know. I want to talk about some of the province's long-standing issues, which have probably been exacerbated by the pandemic. First, immigration. We have heard that there are newcomers that don't have access to Medicare because they've had delays in processing their routine applications at the federal level. That's outside of their control. They'll undoubtedly be approved, but as you can appreciate, it's more stressful during a pandemic. What can we do here in the province to support individuals that are working here, they're studying here, and help them get Medicare coverage as they wait on the federal government to approve them?
So as mentioned by Minister Dunn, that has been a problem with getting the immigration flow moving again. We've had numerous discussions on that in that regard, and I'd like to think it is starting to loosen up now. I would only say that we should know each situation so that we can particularly go after if it's the federal government in the sense, or to understand the exposure and be able to deal with it directly. So not in the general terms, but in individuals that say, this is my problem, I don't have this, because we can chase files. If it's a federal government, we can chase files for specific cases and get action on those.
Okay, thank you. Healthcare. We have, as you mentioned, 44,000 New Brunswickers, 15,000 right here in Fredericton currently on a waiting list for primary care. How are you going to tackle that?
Well, as I mentioned also, was a commitment to cut it in half. And you know, there is that's certainly a possibility to do that. And I guess when I look at the services too, in terms of overall health care, it's, you know, we've rolled out a program for nurse practitioners and having more access that way. It's managed the entire system for a service delivery model. When you look at how money is spent in the healthcare field, you really have to evaluate it closely and decide, okay, how do I get more results from the money being spent? And that's what we're doing within government right now. And that applies everything from, you know, doctors seeing patients and how many do they see and how many could they see. And because you see a wide spectrum of, let's say in the case of seeing patients, you see a very wide spectrum on a family physician in relation to, let's say, their salary, which is all public now. And that spectrum runs from like 350 million to 1.8 million. In salary range for a family physician. So it's kind of hard to understand how all that money is being spent and is it getting the best value to the actual patients. And we're looking under the hood of all that.
Okay. You referred to a 90-day review of the rental situation in New Brunswick. When do you expect to put eliminating the double tax back on the table as a means to encourage even more high-density residential construction? And we're going to need that to achieve our immigration goals and to provide more affordable housing.
Yes, and I do support it, as you know, and it was in our budget a year ago, which seems like a distant memory. But the idea of us getting a continued reduction in tax is still on our radar. We have to see where we're going to end up here at the end of the year. And I guess thinking about what conditions promote investment. We're seeing investment in the province, so we're seeing buildings, we're seeing, you know, multiple family units over and above the commercial interest in terms of businesses, other businesses. So I do see it coming back. Whether it'll be part of this year's budget, I just can't commit to that right now because, you know, we spent $200 million, as I said, over and above what we'd ever planned to spend this year on. And fortunately, our budget last year had a surplus in it of about $125 million or so. We were paying down the debt of about $125 million. So we had the ability but we lost a lot of revenue with this change in COVID. So, but we did have some strength in our budget. There isn't tax room. I don't want tax people anymore. There's no room for that in our province. But the goal of getting on a budget and a track to reduce the double tax, it is still a priority, but I can't commit to it to this spring.
Okay. We are getting close to the end of our time. I want to ask one question about vaccinations. What's our plan if the vaccine rollout continues to be stalled?
Well, as you know, we have been thankful the federal government has committed to buying the vaccines, and that is a big factor. But we have to have vaccines to buy, and we have 6 million doses that are committed to Canada, both Pfizer and Moderna, by the end of March. The challenge is we have, I think, about this month, maybe 500,000 or so coming in the month of February, but we don't have a commitment on the timelines beyond that, or nor even when they come week by week, except a week or two in advance, and that makes it very difficult. We can vaccinate about a minimum of 40,000 a week, and we think we can go as high as 80,000. So if we have vaccines, we could be in great shape by let's say in the next 3 months, because in the flu season we vaccinate about 400,000 in like 2 to 3 months at the outside. So my concern and my questions to the federal government have been, we have 4 other vaccines in the hopper to be approved by Health Canada, one of which is being used in the UK widely right now. So why widely? So I say, why aren't we able to get that one approved? Like, what's the timeline for approval? And what about the other ones coming behind it? Because every country we know is crying for vaccines. So we are in the queue there. And our commitments that the Prime Minister told us in their last call was that we have a commitment on quarterly supply, but not on how it's dispersed weekly. So it could all come the end of March, or it could come, at any sporadic moment. So it's like we need continuity in order to plan the vaccinations, but I guess we'd figure that out if we just knew we had supply. I would like to think we should know when they can be approved, the other ones, and then we get some longer-term commitments. Right now, the federal government is saying, well, we're looking at our own production facility late September or the new year. That's a long ways away. So we think that we can get it in production, even look at that sooner from existing facilities, and can they get a license agreement? Can that ramp up? So we keep talking with the federal government, and obviously they're engaging to try to find a solution and want to find one as well.
I know we're pretty much out of time, but I am going to ask you one last question. A lot of small businesses think they should be reclassified within the color-coded recovery phases, given their operational plans, given their strict adherence to public health measures. People like salons or small fitness providers. Can the government create a mechanism to look at these businesses and consider reclassifying some of them?
So I would say, yes, we can look at these businesses, and we can look at them in the sense of what they provide. And the reason I say that is because we did evaluate these businesses. WorkSafe went to each one of them and said, okay, what protocols have you set up? It allowed us to learn more about how the pandemic has spread and what precautions can be taken to avoid it and allow people to get on with their business. So I'm always interested to look at each case and say, okay, what are you doing? Not generalize, so people say, oh, well, they're in business, why can't I be? Well, here's what they're doing to protect themselves. I think, given what we've seen from New Brunswickers in general, we should be willing to have that discussion and look closely at their operation and how does it work or not work, and not throw everyone in the same bucket. The variant bucket is the one that I always qualify because of the sensitivities about not the unknown. But yeah, I think people should apply, and we should look at that, and it should be part of our ongoing discussions with public health.
That's great news for a lot of small businesses. That does bring us to the end of our questions. We want to thank our members. We want to thank chambers from across the province. And I want to say a special thank you to the team at the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce for putting on our virtual State of the Province today. Thank you, Premier Higgs, for delivering the 48th Annual State of the Province Address virtually. Hopefully it won't be virtual in the future. I want to say another huge thank you to our sponsors. And thank you, most of all, to all of you who have tuned in today to join us at the 48th Annual Fredericton Chamber of Commerce State of the Province Address.